Hey there, it's Katie Jarvis with Managing the Mess. If we haven't met before, I'm a K through 6 elementary art teacher and I teach at a Title I school just outside of Washington, D.C. Today, you're going to notice I am not in my art room, and that's because it is summer. And I'm going to share with you something that I do each and every summer, and that is I reread this book by Michael Linsin. It's called Classroom Management for Art, Music, and PE Teachers. And what I'm going to do today is give a brief overview of the book. So if you've never read it before, I know you're a busy teacher and you might not have time to do it right now. I'm going to overview and give you some tips that you can use in your art room right away. Now, I do suggest that you get on Amazon and you do purchase this book. If you've already read the book before, I'm going to break this down for art teachers. So I'm going to make connections to what do I do each and every day in my art room, and what is my philosophy that really lines up with what is in this book. You might be wondering what I've been up to this summer besides reading. Well, I've had a lot of time to travel with family, and I've also been posting on my Instagram. So you can see some pictures of my travel there. I also post things that I've been buying for my classroom and tips and tricks for art teachers. So I will link down below so that you can follow me on Instagram. I've also created a back to school playlist for art teachers. So this is a free playlist within my YouTube channel. In the headings at the top, there is a section for playlist. When you click there, what you're coming up to is a group of videos. So these are going to play just one after the other. So this is wonderful to listen to when you are setting up your art room. And I've just recently started posting on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I have 2 free resources available right now. The first one you can use as your beginning of the school year project. In the past, I have done a Where's Waldo? So we hide the principal in a bulletin board, and then every student the first week or 2 of school creates their very own Waldo version of themselves, and we hide it on the bulletin board, and each day I would move the principal around. So that is a freebie that I have available. I also have a list of how I recite the art room rules. So this is a list of different voices and styles to keep it fun and fresh. If you, like me, have the students recite the rules at the beginning of each and every class. Some paid products that I have currently that go with classroom management is my art support report. So this is that note I've talked about in other videos, and I'll link down below to this as well, that I use to communicate with the classroom teacher about the behavior in art for that day. I also have up there my marker techniques and my crayon techniques. All the things that I have on Teachers Pay Teachers go along with one of my videos. So you have a lot of resources as to how to use that product and be successful in your art room. What's really unique about this book is that it is specifically for specialists about classroom management. I'm not sure that there's another book out there that is like that. And what's unique about this as well is that the author, like I mentioned, has been a classroom teacher and he's been a specialist. So he opens up the book by talking about disadvantages and advantages as far as classroom management and being a specialist. A disadvantage is that we are not classroom teachers that are likely seeing the students every single day. So time is a big disadvantage. We're also not having such close contact with families, and that can be a disadvantage as far as student behavior. Teachers have a lot of time with their classroom, so they're able to really build that sense of family with that little group. And what happens also that's a disadvantage is for specialists, we're getting a bunch of different classes into our room. So we're having teachers that have a lot of experience and a lot of skills as far as classroom management. Their quiet, calm classes are coming down the hallway and they already know how to work together and how to resolve conflicts among each other. We're also teaching maybe somebody at the same grade level, different class, different teacher with different experience, different set of classroom management skills. And that class might come down the hallway. You can already hear them coming. They're pushing and shoving. They're arguing with each other. You're needing to teach some very basic things about getting along when they're in the art room. So that is a disadvantage. Now, an advantage of being a specialist is we only see our classes maybe once a week. So students really look forward to the time that they have with us. So that gives us a lot of influence, that they really enjoy what we teach and that it's very novel to them because they only get little doses of that. Now, what I've seen at my school is that teachers will share in their morning meeting message, today we have art, and read that with their students, and then the students will cheer. So I know that my students are looking forward to spending time with me, and that gives me some influence over their behavior when they're in my class. Now, another advantage we have is we teach something really fun, and you got into teaching art because you have a passion for that subject. Now, something that can take that passion away is a lack of good classroom management, which is why this book is so great. You do not want to lose your passion for what you're doing and your excitement for your job. What's the one thing that you always hear mentioned about classroom management? Building relationships. Now, when you're seeing that in other books or in other resources, they're mainly talking about relationships with classroom teachers and students. So something that's very different is we're trying to build relationships with hundreds of students. So that's why this book is really great. It is talking about that. Now, it's going to be different for you because you are trying to connect with so many different students. So one way that you're going to connect and have your classroom be a place that students want to be is that you're going to have really good classroom management. When they come to your class, they're going to want to know that things are going to be organized and ready, that you're excited to see them. They're going to want to see that they are safe to create things and not have students bullying them while they're working. So your management really can make or break how the students feel about your class. If they don't feel like you have things under control, they're not going to enjoy that art making experience and look forward to it. And then you're going to lose your influence over the students. Now, I have a video all about how you can encourage positive behavior in the art room. I will link it down below. One of the things that he also mentions that I mentioned in my video as well is you need to remain calm. Now, we teach many classes throughout the day. So many teachers start with something like a mindful minute. And things to calm students right as they come in and set that tone. But really, as the teacher, you need to model this. You need to stay calm with how you're speaking to students. I know that yelling feels great when you're doing it, but it doesn't achieve anything. You're not building relationships with those students. You might be just kind of undermining them and get them to comply in that moment, but that is not a student that's going to like you if that is how you interact with students by yelling. So really avoid yelling in your classroom. Also, not great for your voice. Keep in mind, this is something that a wonderful principal that I had taught me. You do not work hard for a boss that you don't like. So I don't want you to be all caught up in being the fun teacher and worrying about kids liking you, but students need to think that you are fair and that you care about them, okay? Or they're not gonna work hard in your classroom, okay? Nothing that you do is going to work out if they don't, on the service level, like and respect you. They're not going to give you effort in your classroom if they don't have that kind of feeling about you. So that's something you really need to work to build that environment in your class and build on those relationships. Michael Linsin's all about having a management plan. So a plan on what are the rules, what's going to happen when someone breaks a rule, and thinking about this ahead of time, and then taking the feeling about it out in the moment, that you're just simply following the plan. You're not getting angry at a student. Now, how he does this is a little different than how I do it, so I'll explain that. He does points. So this is a system of having the class work together, and he does just 4 points. So he gives a point for how the class does entering the classroom, how they do with listening, how they do with their effort, and then a point also for lining up. Now, I do think lining up is really important because it affects the classroom teacher. You're setting up kind of the tone for the rest of the day. If they come to pick up their class and the class is running around and crazy, it's a really bad reflection on you. If you've got a nice, quiet, calm line when the classroom teacher comes to pick up the class, they're going to earn some respect for you, and they're going to drop their class off in the same manner. They're going to make sure the kids are quiet and calm before they bring them down to art. So I do think that that is really important, and he sticks to those 4 points, and they have to earn those together. Now, he's not into prizes and stickers and all of that, and I am not as well. I have a couple videos about like what works in my classroom and what doesn't work, and I'm going to link those down below so you can see some real specifics of in the art room, things that are successful and things, I've tried out at least that were not successful to me. And to me, prizes, not so much. Your class should be fun. Your class should be the reward. Having to worry about all those extra things, for me, is just too much. He likes to have the students have these points so that they are working together. And it's a fun competition. So a competition between the classes also gives the class some motivation just from week to week to compete with themselves. Now, my management plan is that I do a happy and sad board. I have a video with all the details about this, of course, but just to break it down quickly, I roughly do the points like he does, except for I'm just lazier about it. I don't have an official point for entering. Some weeks I'm, looking out for that in each and every class and I give a point. But I don't set up that I just have points for those 4 things that he does. I might catch a class doing, incredible listening. I might be like, wow, a lot of people are raising their hand and adding on to what Mrs. Jarvis is saying today. And people are being really respectful listeners. So they might earn 2 or 3 points while we're seated on the carpet. So that's why I'm not really rigid with those 4 points that he has. Those are things that I'm looking at, but just, as fast as our pace as our jobs move, I don't like to have to give a point for lining up or have to give a point for entering. Sometimes those things are just moving too fast that I don't, but I will reward for other things. And I do a happy and sad board. So I'm noticing things that are going well, but I'm also keeping track of tally points for when something is not going well and stopping students and acknowledging that. So that's a system that may work for you in your art room. Be sure to check that out. Now, something else along with your management plan and students knowing that they can rely on you to follow that plan each and every week is the environment that you set up. So if your room is just a mess, if you are looking for their artwork every week, if you're not ready when the class comes in because you're trying to figure out what in the heck is this class doing today? Where is my PowerPoint? You're not focused on them and the environment is a little bit chaotic and messy, students are not going to respect your space as much, okay? If you're an organized art teacher that counts the erasers at the end of every class and keeps them in an ice cube tray, they can't mess around with that. That's very clear to them that you care about this, that you want them to care about this when you teach them about that, and they're going to help you upkeep that environment. If there's a mess, it's kind of a signal to students that they don't have to behave in that space, that things and expectations just a little bit more loose in this area. Now in art room, it is a little bit more messy, but students should see the organization. They should see that you have artwork labeled. They should see that you have a place for each class's artwork. They should see that labels are on supplies, that you have systems that you're using, even though, the sink might be dirty, there might be trash overflowing in the trash can. Not every little thing do you need to worry about in your environment, and your environment alone isn't going to make or break your management. But if students see that you care about the space, it's going to make them want to care about it as well. So when you are setting up your classroom and setting up decorations, those things are important because it's showing that you care about that space and it's helping them to buy in as well. Another place you can let students buy in to your class and behaving in your classroom is by selling your lesson. I've always said that if I wasn't a teacher, I'd be kind of curious about what it would be like to be in advertising, because one of my favorite things to do is when I'm presenting a lesson to students, how can I get them so excited that they cannot wait to get up off the carpet and go back to their seats and get started on that lesson, and encouraging them to get excited about that lesson and get into the learning is something that's going to keep them focused. It's going to keep them on task, and I'm not going to have any behavior problems. So it's really worth my time to set up those creative, fun lessons and to get excited about it myself so that it's contagious to my students. There is a whole section of this book that is absolutely gold about routines, teaching routines, modeling routines, and showing students how to do these routines. Now, I like to set this up at the beginning of the school year. So if you're seeing this in time, these are things you want to do right away from the first day to make your job easier. Now, I like to teach the rules by making a video. I like to show students what to do and what not to do. I'm going to be sure to link that video down below. I explain my process of how I set up that video, but also I will show you the exact video that I show to my students to make it clear to them what my expectations are. by creating a video if you have time to do that, or even taking pictures of what to do, what not to do, really saves your voice those first few weeks of school, which is really important. When he is coming up with different routines, such as lining up, cleaning up, he is really careful to go slow. And I think that is amazing advice. In fact, I know this must be with responsive classroom because I've heard my principal say this. You need to go slow to go fast. So those first few weeks of school, things are going to move really slow because you're going to be taking the time, I hope, to explain to students, how do they come in? How do they sit down on the carpet? How exactly do they sit when they're on the carpet? What do they do if they have a question? You're going to need to teach all of that, even though you're excited and you want to jump right into the fun art lessons, and your students do too. How can you make going over those rules and routines really clear for students so that this isn't something you have to keep revisiting throughout the year? You don't want to be pulling your hair out about behavior in the middle of the year because you didn't clearly set up these expectations at the beginning. So at the beginning of the year, when you're teaching things, you want to show pictures, you want to show videos, you want to stand up and model how do we line up. You want to ask, hey, who's got any questions about this, and clarify if anyone does have any questions. You're going to want to have a student show the other students what to do and be pointing out, what they got right about that routine when they're modeling it and showing it. And then you're going to want to have everybody practice. When you're doing these routines, especially for the first few times, and it doesn't go right, go back and do it again. Make sure you explain to students what needs to be fixed. Hey, I noticed people were talking as they came in. That's not our expectation. We're going to go back and try that again. You don't need to yell. You don't need to raise your voice, but you need to make it clear to students that if they do not do these routines specifically as you are teaching them, they're going to have a consequence. And that consequence is they're going to go back and they're going to have to do it again. They're going to want their art time with you, so they're not going to want to do this. But you want to set up this expectation at the beginning. It's much, much harder to do this, and you have more resistance from students when you start to try to do this for the very first time in the middle, or gosh forbid, at the end of the school year. Now, one thing I think as a specialist you're going to notice is it's really repetitive, okay? You're going to go through your, speech about, when I say macaroni and cheese, you say everybody freeze, and all your cleanup directions. You're going to be going through that over and over and over again. But remember, you might be hearing that 6-7 times a day, but your students are hearing that once a week. So to them, it's not repetitive, it's helpful, okay? So make sure that you are kind of repeating yourself those first few weeks of school so that you're sure that every class has heard things about your routines. I like to use slides when I teach for this reason, so that I am not skipping over anything. I'm showing all my students, hey, that's where the trash cans are. Hey, that's where the drying rack is, or things throughout my room that they need to know where they are, or how we do those routines. Make sure that you have attention signals. Now, I know a lot of teachers, have a bell, they have the Mona Lisa, but if that's not working for you, it's because you didn't teach it right. Now, the time to do this is at the beginning of the school year, and he talks about this in his book about having that attention signal and waiting until you get that student attention. You're not going to move on if people are not doing what you've asked. If someone's still talking, you're not going to start the lesson if you've already asked for Mona Lisa listening with hands still, eyes forward, and lips zipped. You're setting that expectation at the beginning of the year. And if you're not going to let things go, okay? And that can be a lot. It can be a lot, especially at the beginning, but it pays off, okay? For me, sometimes will think like, I'm going to be evaluated this year. So I'm going to do the very, very best I can about not letting things go. And that's just a little motivation for me. It might not be that motivating to you, but it really does make your job easier later if you don't let things go at the beginning. If, they're too noisy in the line, if you stop things and make sure, everybody's standing on a place in the line and their hands are still, their eyes are forward. When you give those reminders and you set those expectations and have them redo things again, showing them, no, I meant what I said. I don't want this sloppy version of what I said. I want exactly what I said. And you make that clear that you say what you mean. That's going to build trust with your students. They're going to enjoy being in your class because they know how it runs. They know it runs like a well-oiled machine. They know that everyone has that expectation already to come in quietly and sit down. And if you're looking for a routine about what to do at the beginning of class, I have a video. It was one of the first videos I actually ever made on YouTube. Do you know how to start art? And I have hour-long classes, but it shows that first like 3 to 5 minutes of my class and how I get students calm, how I go over the rules and get them focused. Another really important thing he talks about is the end of your class, because I know for me, especially when I was a new art teacher, I was really good at the beginning. I was really excited when they came in. But throughout the class, when they started making things and then they started cleaning up, I lost control. As the class went on, I could feel it each and every time. I went from being in total control with silent students listening to me to I'm kind of shouting cleanup directions and I'm hoping for the best that everything is done before the classroom teacher gets there. So you want to have a strong ending routine and a strong beginning routine, and then that's sandwiched in your class that behavior is going to improve throughout because they know what's expected, okay? I have a video that shows some routines about lining up already and cleaning up in the art room specifically that you're gonna wanna check out, especially if you're a new teacher or you're looking for some new ideas to refresh. If you ever have ideas of routines and things you want to see in the art room, be sure you leave comments to me down below. Most of my ideas come from questions that I get from other art teachers, so I really do appreciate it. In the book, he says, effective classroom management saves time. It never wastes time. It is really worth it to get good at classroom management because it makes your job easier. It makes your classroom run better, and students will want to be in your class. When you're doing classroom management effectively, he points out it gives you more time to teach. For us, it gives you more time to make art. Do you want to be teaching students how to line up, all year? Or do you want to do those things really effectively at the beginning of the year so you can get into fun things in the middle and end of the school year and not be going over and over about behavior reminders? When you're starting to teach routines, you want to teach one little short routine and you want to teach it really well because these routines will snowball on each other, he explains. So if you teach students very clearly how they're going to come into the room and sit down and they see how that looks, that first you talk about it, you show them a picture or a video about it, then one student models how to do it while they watch and listen how that student is doing that, and then they all get to practice. When they kind of see that process and they successfully complete one routine, it's going to snowball that you can teach more and more advanced routines. You can teach how do we clean up printmaking, how do we clean up clay, how do we save our paintings for the next week. All those things that are a little bit more complex are going to be easier routines to teach when they've got those basic routines down, when they've got kind of the flow of how you teach a routine. From simple, they can begin to do things and be successful with things that are a little bit more complex. When you're going to start with your directions, keep them simple. So this is when you see teachers going, if you can hear my voice, clap 2 times, because what just happened? They had to stop and listen, yes, but also they just completed their first direction, right? They've already done that clap 2 times. So you can do, everybody stand up, everybody sit down. And then you can get more complex. Everybody check that you're sitting crisscross mountain or mermaid. You can add on to those things, but you may want to start with clapping, stand up, sit down, turn around, even silly things so you have everybody's attention. And then you take the directions to something that's a little bit more advanced because you've already got the focus. You already know you can say something and they will do that back. But you've got to get that buy-in first, that they can see that they can be successful and that you're not just talking and talking, giving them a million things that they need to remember. So keep it simple, especially at first, super things that they can be successful with right away, right after you say it, and then giving directions that build a little bit more. What's also important is when you're giving directions, some of your students, especially as they get to know you, are going to be already thinking, oh, I know what this lady's about to say, and they're just going to start cleaning up or whatever it is. So he has a thing that he said, in a minute. He says this before he gives directions. What I like to say is, in a minute, but not yet. So students know, hey, she just wants us to stop. She wants us to listen. We're not moving yet. We're not going to do this thing as soon as it pops out of her mouth. She's going to say what it is, and then there's going to be a signal of what to do. So I do this with my cleanup routine. I will say in a minute, but not yet. give those cleanup directions, and I turn the lights on. So I have the lights off and students aren't frozen when I'm giving those cleanup directions. I actually blink the lights and say, macaroni and cheese, everybody freeze. And then I say, we're not walking, we're not talking, in a minute, but not yet. I give those cleanup directions and then I turn the light on, and then that's my signal to go. And then they can move on to the next task. So you really do need to have a signal that students can go ahead and start on that direction that you have given. You're also going to want to set up chances for your students to succeed, where you're just stepping back, they explain this in the book, and you're observing and you're giving them a chance to do it. Now you might have to go back and do it again. You might have to repeat your direction and like, okay, let's start cleaning up again. You might have to clarify if something didn't go quite right, but you want to give them chances to be independent, to do these on their own. You should not be the one walking around and cleaning up and narrating everything you do. You should be sitting back and your student should be completing these routines. At least that is the goal. He talks about how the purpose of having a management plan is to hold students accountable. I know myself, I hear myself complaining about this. I hear other teachers talking about how students these days are not held accountable. Some of that we really can't fix, but we can fix this in our classroom and we can hold students accountable. One way you can do this is by being very clear that students know and understand your rules. I am really big on this, and Michael Linsin is really big on this as well, because it's very difficult to give students a consequence if they don't know what they did. Okay, if they go home and tell their parents, I didn't know I was breaking a rule, that's not going to give you a lot of credibility. Okay, you don't want them telling your administrator that. You want to be very clear with students about what is expected in your room. He has just 3 rules to keep it super simple. The first one is listen and follow directions. Second rule, raise your hand. And the third rule, which encompasses a lot, be nice. Now, I do have more rules than that because in the art room, cleaning up is a really big deal. So I have one about that. And I'll pop my rules up on the screen. But again, you can find that information down below. I will link videos about my rules. I also have a procedure where I go over the rules each and every week with my students. So I'm setting those high expectations. These things are very, very clear and fresh in their mind each week. Now for consequences, just like he has 3 rules, he also has 3 consequences. So the first one is to give a warning. The second one is to give a timeout. The third one is to contact a parent. Now he talks about how you need to do this with caution. How you're going to contact the parents, this takes a lot of time as a teacher. Now it's really effective, but at what point are you going to contact parents and how are you going to contact them? Are you going to find time in your schedule to call them? Because you might be playing phone tag for a little while and that takes some time. Are you going to send an email? Not everybody's mom and dad opens up emails regularly. Are you going to send a paper home that they have to get signed? Because then later on, remember, you need to be invested in chasing that paper down or giving them another copy. In my district, we have a way that we can text parents. So that's kind of an effective way for me. But I can't do that for hundreds of students each day. You want to set up a system that students take you seriously. They know that you say you're going to give this warning to a parent at a certain point, and you actually follow through and do it. So you're going to find over time, you're contacting parents less and less. I do a system called 1, 2, 3 magic. So I don't give just 1 warning. I would give up to 2 warnings. On the second warning, I do kind of make a note of that for myself within my grade book. And then I will also note this on my communication that I have with the classroom teacher. If I have to ask somebody about something, the same exact thing, let's say it's running. I talked to somebody about running twice. I'm mentioning to the teacher that they were running. I'm explaining what I did. I'm not expecting the classroom teacher to do anything, okay? I'm just communicating that happened. Gives them some information. They can do with it what they want. I'm letting them know what happened with the running, okay? Let's say the running happens again. So 1 warning, 2 warning, classroom teacher knows on that second warning, I'm documenting on that second very specific warning. And remember, in my class, these warnings are happening after we've already gone over the rules, okay? So this is really like the 3rd time they're hearing this in that class period. When I get to that 3rd reminder, that's when my students would have a timeout. If students have a timeout, I am definitely documenting that for myself. I'm definitely letting the classroom teacher know about that, that was the consequence, and I'm definitely letting their families know. And for me, like I said, I usually do this in a text, just very matter of fact, this is what happened, new chance, start over fresh the next week. Having such a plan helps me because I don't have to think about this, okay? And Michael Linsin talks about this too. There's no stress about like, oh my God, what am I gonna do if somebody breaks a rule? You're gonna follow your plan. This is what you do each and every time with every single student, every single day. It's a lot at the beginning, but it quickly becomes something that students just know and expect, and it helps your classroom to run that much better. When you create your behavior management plan, Michael Linsin tells you to really be consistent with it and to be all in. And really think before you refer the students to your administrator or put the problem on the classroom teacher. It should be something that as much as possible you handle yourself. And this is why when the students are misbehaving in my class, I said I'm on that second warning, a student have timeout, I'm documenting that because there is going to be a time when it does make sense to contact your administrator. It's not going to be often, okay? They're not going to like you if it's often. You've got to have a place in your plans when that does happen. For me, I'm not contacting my administrator until I'm seeing a strong pattern of misbehavior. So I would say maybe even over a quarter. A severe incident, yes, okay, I'm gonna have to follow my school's plan on that and refer them immediately for something that's unsafe, such as a fight. If I'm talking about misbehavior in my art class, maybe like refusal to participate and things like that, I would let that go for a quarter where I'm documenting and writing down different things that I tried. I would contact the parents probably about 3 times and talk with them about a plan and the classroom teacher about a plan to help that student succeed before I went to the principal for a consequence of that nature. So, just a bad day with a student, you're not going to send them to your administrator, but have that kind of in your plan so you know in your mind when that's going to happen and be ready for it. You do want to say the things that you've tried. You don't want them to just turn them around and say, well, have you ever contacted this kid's parents before? Because if the answer is no, why is the principal taking their time to deal with this incident in your class, okay? And giving your principal that power shows your students that you're not that powerful, okay? That you're not in charge of your class, that the principal's really in charge. That's when it really gets bad. And they're no longer going to take you seriously and listen to you. Michael Linsin has a section in the book about bad days and, tough classes because that happens. I have a video about managing the reset because I feel like this happens to me every year. There's a class where I just need to reset it and restart. All the other specialists will be talking about this same class and what's my plan for dealing with this. So I'm not dreading it and trying to be absent, every time that I see this class. So he suggests slowing down and being very calm with how you speak to students and how you deal with that class, and have them reset, have them do things again. And again, I go into more detail about this and what that looks like in the art room in that separate video, and I'll put that reset video down below. One tip that I'm gonna give you as a takeaway is a catalyst for bad behavior, according to Michael Linsin, is teacher attention. That's why he keeps, promoting in this book, being calm, staying even, being predictable to students, not yelling, okay? Teacher attention causes misbehavior, unpreparedness. So if you're not ready to welcome your students, if you told them you were gonna, have something graded or you were gonna have this material and things ready for them and it's not ready, that causes misbehavior, okay? If you are not focused on the students and you're preparing things and such as you're coming into class. And inconsistency. When this kid gets in trouble and you call mom and dad, but this kid does the same thing and you don't, okay? Students see that, they're gonna call you out on it, I'm sure. That's gonna cause misbehavior. When these things are happening from you, you're gonna see disrespect and you're gonna see misbehavior in your classroom. So you really need to take control and have a plan of how you're going to approach your behavior this year. I hope you found this video helpful. Be sure to check out the full book when you get a chance. Like I said, this is not something I've read once. This is something I think I've read for the last 5 or 6 summers. It's really that good. My mom was an elementary school librarian and she really enjoyed it as well. So be sure that you share this with a specialist in your school.